So, today we're tackling a topic that's much asked for. Ignore the gross hat hair, but a lot of you asked how to edit photos on Instagram, and so today I have all the I have all the answers for you. So, without further ado, let's go to work. So, one of the first apps that I use is Lightroom, and on Lightroom, I just do all of the manipulation of colors. So basically, you have in this photo all of the main colors that you could possibly see. So, you have the blue color of the sky, and then you have the green color of the trees, and then orange from the shirt, and then a little bit of red in the background. So, what I like to do is first figure out what kind of colors there are to manipulate, and then see how I can make the photo more interesting. But before everything, I will go to light, and then I like using Lightroom for a foundation for my photos. So I press auto here, and what that does and why I use it is basically Lightroom kind of gives your photos their take on what the most optimized filters are for your photo. So they kind of adjust the lighting if they think it's too bright, or they change the highlights. You can see here exposure, contrast, shadows, whites and blacks, and they kind of just like pick what they think is going to make your photo look best. So I kind of let Lightroom take, the reins on it first. And then if I feel like something's too bright or too light, which is usually the only thing I kind of change, because I do usually like what Lightroom does, I'll kind of touch on the exposure. So let's say I feel like it's a little bit too bright. I'll move the exposure down a little, because I feel like when you move the exposure down, it brings out the colors a lot more. But I think in this photo, sometimes I make it a little bit brighter just to show me a little bit better, because sometimes your phone doesn't capture the light as well as you think. But you can also play around with it. Obviously, don't overexpose. I feel like in the past, a lot of bloggers or fashion bloggers would crazily overexpose their photos, and that's not the look we're going for, girl. So we're gonna stay in the middle, just like slightly above. And then next we kind of go on to the next step on this little bar tab on the bottom to color. So what I like to do is change my photos a little bit warmer. I'm a fan of the warmer tones, but if you're a fan of cooler tones, go you, because I used to really like cooler tones as well, but I had to stick to one due to my theme. So I go to temperature and I move it up to 12. I don't know why 12 is the magic number for this setting, but for me, I just always put it at 12 so that I know that all of my photos are going to be the same level of warmth. And then on the top right corner here, you go to mix. And when you press the color mix, this is the fun part. So this is the main function I use Lightroom for. You manipulate all of the colors in whichever way you want. And honestly, I just learned through trial and error. The main ones I use are obviously red, orange, yellow, green, and blue, but not all photos will need you to use all of them, because not all the colors are present all the time. So I use mostly red for changing the color of the warm tones. So as you can see here, if you move the red, it either gets cooler, so the orangey red tones turn more orange, or it gets more pink. And so usually, depending on the theme, so let's say I want to post two colors where the orange or the red pops, then I'll kind of just keep around this range. I never really go to the magentas, but I have in the past if I felt like that shirt or the background looked really good in in magenta. But for this one, I'm going to stay in the... I think I'm going to stay here, which is no change at all. No, I'm just kidding. And then for luminance, I'll make it darker, because it really does it kind of makes the colors intensified and also kind of matte. Because if you see it, if I go this way, it kind of makes it lighter, but it also drowns out the color. Basically brings out the lighting of the red colors. So when I make it darker, you can see like my lips are, oh, is that Chairman Mao? Anyways, you can see that my lips are going to be darker, and I like madder, more mauvey red lip tones, so I can actually just change the color of my lipstick, which is super cool. So I kind of just change it to that, and then I don't want to stay too long here, but I'll also kind of intensify to bring out the orange as well. I think actually I'll go even lighter, just because then it's more of a true orange. And then I'm gonna, for the orange tab, all I do is basically change the luminance. Because if I change anything else, look what fucking happens. Like, hello, we're not gonna be an alien here. Well, I guess this is pretty cool. You can like totally become a tomato or a banana. But we're not, just make sure you don't change that tab, because it always looks very strange. And then so on the orange tab, all I change is the luminance to make myself more tan. But you want to be careful of not, going too cray on this, because, girl, that's not what you want to look like, okay? Because I look like a piece of poop. Sorry. And no, I'm not trying to say that darker skin colors are not beautiful, but you can see this is clearly not even a skin color. Is literally just, it's bronze and the color of poop. Anyways, so we're gonna go around. I don't like to overdo it, because sometimes when you take photos, it washes out your natural skin color, and so I'm just adding it back in so that it doesn't look too washed out, or I don't look too pale. So somewhere like here, I don't want to look like a Harajuku girl either. I'm not like crazily into like super tanned looks. Anyways, moving on to yellow. So in the yellow tab, what we do is basically, you see how all those fashion bloggers have this like really nice corally tone? It's because they basically change the sunlight into a more pinkish, or they change it warmer. So this is what you use to achieve that look. So as you can see, when you take a photo with light, it just looks like this. But then when you move it towards the warmer side, it makes it have this really beautiful corally pinkish tone that it took me so long to figure out how to get this look, but I'm so glad I did. And what I do is I turn up the luminance so that the pinky tones are kind of faded out a little bit more. It looks more natural, and I also make it a little bit more saturated depending on the color, or depending on the photo. I usually go pretty far left, but recently I've been going a little bit less left so that it's not too much of a pink overall tone. It just like slightly hints like the parts that have lighting into like a pinkish tone. And then greens, I don't like greens in my photos. It just doesn't match with my feed. And I also have another technique that I kind of make, I guess in my way, I make greens look more fashion blogger. So it has this like really beautiful, like muted tone, but that's for another time. And if you're interested, you can just DM me or comment below and I'll tell you. But for usually what I do is I bring it all the way to the left so that it turns into this like olivey color, and I also turn down saturation quite a bit. But be careful, because if you go all the way, it just looks like dead. Like the leaves look dead, and that's not what you want. You want them to look slightly dead, like don't kill. What's the fun in killing all the way? Like you just want it slightly. And then luminance is also going to go up pretty high. I just like turning up the luminance for basically all of them minus red, where I actually put it, I have the reverse for that, because it makes it more natural and muted, and it brings this really nice like glossy finish to your photos. And then lastly, we have blue. Teal and blue are kind of, when I first played with Lightroom, they're kind of confusing, but teal actually doesn't do much, so I could like move this a lot and it doesn't do much other than basically the teal is the undertone of the blue. So unless you have a sky photo, and there's some photos where I change the sky completely purple, And then in those cases where you have a lot of sky, then you can see the teal elements, but in most photos you just play with the blue. So in this case, I usually make, for that beautiful like teal orange vibe that literally went viral in all of Instagram, you put the hue tab to the left, and then because it makes it really saturated when you do that, like you can see here, it's really, really saturated. What you're gonna do is bring the luminance up to just like natural it out again. Again, same theory. So there we go. We're done with Lightroom basically. It's half finished. It's kind of like half when you have eyeshadow on and foundation on, but you haven't done your mascara, eyeliner. That's kind of what Lightroom is for my photos. So it's definitely just the foundation and just the eyeshadows. We're getting to the eyeliner soon, but basically that's what I do in Lightroom. And then sometimes after I play with the colors, I kind of turn it down a little bit because I always have a natural tendency to turn up the exposure. But then I realize when I turn it down a bit, it makes the photo more, that makes the colors in the photo more in depth. Now that we're finished with Lightroom, let's move on to FACETUNE. So once you've saved your photo off of Lightroom, we're going to load it onto FACETUNE. And I would call FACETUNE basically the Photoshop of your iPhone. So here we're going to, you can bring out certain features. You could remove your entire outfit. It's not going to be as perfect as on Photoshop, but here you can do quite a bit. So you have the functions down here, and the ones I mainly use are the following ones. So for smoothing out skin, I use smooth, and then you go in and you just, graze it lightly on anything you want to smooth out. And I feel like this just makes everything look more flawless. And I feel like I have nothing against Photoshop and making yourself more flawless if you can, because hey, who doesn't want to look better? And it just makes your photo so much more cohesive. And this is your creation, do whatever you want with it. I'm all for that. And so basically what you do is just slightly graze it because it's very delicate to the touch, this app. So, make sure that, you're just gently caressing it like a romantic lover would. That sounded kind of gross, but whatever. So we're going to go ahead and smooth that out. Once that's done, you're going to want to bring out your features. So you go to details and you go in and you slightly just graze over anything, like your eyebrows, your eyes, and sunglasses. And your focus is to really bring yourself out. If you're going to do editing that's about, you're going to do photos of where the focal point is you. So in this case, I want to be the focal point. So I'm going to make myself pop. I'm not going to go and detail out the background. And you can also I didn't detail out my prop here, like the scooter, but you can if you want to as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and whiten the street just because, when you take photos, and especially in sunlight, when you take photos in sunlight, you're going to have a slight yellow hue on all the surfaces because, that's just naturally what happens. And so you want to make sure that you're making all of the colors, the shade that they're supposed to be. So the street's supposed to be, grayish white, and that's kind of what we're doing. And don't forget these little gaps and just removing the warm tone that was added because of the sun. See? And then you pop so much more, and you can also kind of whiten the scooter white parts. And what I love about this is that it doesn't whiten parts that shouldn't be whitened. So it's really, really great. So then after you've done that, you've pretty much done everything that you need to. You could, remove certain elements. Like if I want to remove my face, I could totally use the patch and like turn into the floor. And the final step is doing finishing touches on VSCO. So in this stage, I usually put in finishing touches, anything to do with the frame, like cropping, making the photo slightly more slanted, or anything like adding a more grainy texture, clarity, all that jazz. So it really depends on the photo and also the composition of what I want. I usually refrain from cropping and doing anything with what the size and the frame of the photo looks like, because of the fact that if you change it earlier on, you'll realize that, oh, what if I wanted to make it slightly more wide, or even I wanted more space up top. You can't go back and change it just because it's already done. So you've done, your first and second step in Lightroom and in FACETUNE, and then when you're in VSCO, you're like, oh shit, like I can't fix it anymore. So in this stage, what we're going to do is first apply, what I do is I apply a general filter on top of all of the photos, but very, very lightly. So what I mean is I use A6 usually in VSCO, and just so that all of my photos have the same kind of tint on top of it, I'll put it maybe to like, maximum 2 to 3. And it doesn't make a huge change. And honestly, I'm kind of in the process of getting rid of this step as well. So, but for the case, for just this scenario, I'm going to put it in. So we're going to put in maybe like 2, it doesn't really matter. And then we go to this tab and I play with the exposure, because you can see it's kind of a little bit overexposed. So when I turn it down a little bit, you can see that the colors are brought out a little bit more. I kind of want it like a little bit. And a lot of this, honestly, is just intuition and what I think looks good in the moment. And it's hard to really say what I do always, but this is generally what I do. So I'm going to go to what my new thing is adding a little bit of grain, and it just makes the photo have a little bit more character. So if you zoom in, I love that, these things add texture and adds interesting factors to the photo, but it doesn't appear obvious to the eye. And I think that's what it means to kind of have your own filter, because people can't just slap a filter on and replicate it. These are things that I figured out on my own, and I think I like and matches my editing style. So basically I use the grain, and I kind of, before it, you can press on the photo and it just looks flat, but then when you add the grain, it has like this interesting complexity and depth. So I usually just do it really lightly, because you don't want it to look like that. You don't want to look like you have an old ass 1900s photo. So we're gonna make it maybe like around 2, like just slightly noticeable. When you zoom in, it's there, but when you don't, it's not. Actually, maybe even a little bit more. Maybe like here. Okay. And then a little bit of fade. I know a lot of fashion bloggers also overfade, like they kind of do this kind of look, which looks cool, but I just also think it makes all the work that I did in Lightroom useless. So I'm just gonna make it like, I usually just make it around 1, like 1.51 there. And then finally I'm gonna play with the crop. So I know that all the coloring, all the editing is exactly as I want it. Now I can play with the composition. So I love being in the center. I don't know what it is, but, maybe just my obsession with being the center of attention. Anyways, so this is going to cut. I usually like to match like the eyes to like this line here, because it makes everything kind of symmetrical. And so see, I'm in the center, and then just sometimes you can notice that the photo is slightly slanted. So you go to straighten, and you want to straighten. Basically, you want to make sure that you are straight, or the road is straight, so that it looks like real life. Because if you had like a crazy, these kind of photos are cool too, but it also makes it look like the street is slanted, and that's not really possible. So you want to avoid that. We're going to make you straight. And yeah, honestly, a lot of things are just slight differences, probably not even noticeable to the average eye, but to me, I'm just super nitpicky about it. And then also I'm going to add in the VSCO tab is going to allow you to look a little taller. So you push it towards the left and it just makes it like, see, I can make this look, or like it changes the angle of the photo. So you can kind of manipulate how tall you look. In this photo, it doesn't really show off the extent of this feature, but like in some photos where I'm standing, I can look substantially taller. So this is super useful trick that you can keep in your thoughts when you're editing. So there we go. We made it slightly longer. I look like I have longer legs. And then sometimes for good measure, I just add a little bit of clarity, makes everything pop just a little bit. So everything just a little bit, but put together makes the photo look so cohesive and beautiful. So this is the final product, guys. Like, what do you think? I love it. Actually, I've edited this photo twice and I still love the photo. Thank you so much for stopping by. That was really fun for me to make and to finally share with you how I edit my photos for Instagram. So if it was helpful for you, please comment and like down below. And as always, subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. And if you have any questions, I would love to answer them also. So yeah, until next time.